I was a skeptic of Chris Eubank Jr. early on in his career, but he has improved and showed me enough since then to now convince me that he is a legitimate force at world level in the super middleweight division. Some styles suit him more than others, but the same can be said of all fighters. Billy Joe Saunders went the distance with people like Spike O'Sullivan and Nick Blackwell and struggled late, whereas Eubank battered and stopped both of those guys. But then Billy Joe Saunders beat Eubank. Styles make fights. Billy Joe Saunders handles boxers better than Eubank does, but Eubank handles pressure fighters better than Billy Joe Saunders does. Some people are obsessing about Eubank's lack of power as if his entire career hinges upon that one thing, as if he doesn't have other abilities to compensate for it, as if there aren't numerous top-level fighters who are also not big punchers. People like Andre Ward and Floyd Mayweather. Eubank can be very elusive when he decides to be. He is definitely more defensively gifted than George Groves, for example. He has a better chin than George Groves too. Anyone remember George Groves versus Kenny Anderson? He also has a much better inside game than George Groves. Groves certainly hits harder and is far more proven. But the point is, all fighters have strengths and weaknesses. And it's a big mistake to obsess over their weaknesses whilst totally ignoring all their strengths. Eubank's speed, athleticism, work rate, and punch variety are superior to those of Callum Smith and George Groves. That doesn't mean he beats both those guys, but it does mean he'd be going into either one of those fights with several advantages over both men. Advantages that should not be underestimated. Callum Smith, for example, is highly touted. But if it weren't for his sheer size and punching power, I'd say stylistically he's tailor-made for Eubank. He's not very fast. He's not very elusive. He's pretty basic, really. Eubank would definitely be able to make him miss and land plenty of those uppercuts that he likes to throw. Don't get it twisted. Callum Smith hits a lot harder than Eubank, and he's physically huge for super middleweight. He's got a good jab. He's a good counter puncher if you stand in front of him. But my point is, all these guys have got strengths and weaknesses. Don't let your hate for Eubank Jr. blind you to his strengths. Or perhaps you're just somebody who rates punching power far more highly than you should. I don't know. It could be one of the two. Moving on to George Groves. Are you trying to tell me that George Groves has got a better chin than Eubank Jr.? Are you trying to tell me that George Groves, at this point in his career at least, not early on in his career, at this point in his career, are you trying to tell me George Groves has got faster hands and feet than Eubank Jr.? People, he don't. Are you trying to tell me George Groves is a better inside fighter than Eubank Jr.? People, he isn't. Are you trying to tell me he's got better punch variety and work rate? He doesn't. He hits harder, yes. He's far more proven at a much higher level, yes. But don't get it twisted and think that Eubank Jr. don't have several advantages over George Groves, because he does. He's certainly the fresher fighter. He hasn't taken anywhere near as much punishment as George Groves has taken in his career. And I have to reiterate again, Eubank Jr., yes, he is a cocky fighter, and that cockiness and that bravado and the showboating that he likes to do might catch up with him one day. That might be his downfall, the fact that he likes to showboat. But when he decides that he's going to be slick, when he decides that he don't want to get hit, His defense, I'm telling you people, is actually quite good. Better than George Groves', I would say. He's better at slipping and moving underneath shots and whatnot and getting out of the way and getting out of danger than George Groves is when he decides that that's what he wants to do. His weakness is in the decisions that he makes. Eubank Jr. sometimes decides, you know what, I don't want to be slick. I want to be macho. That's his mentality, which is a potential problem. Not his technique, not what he's capable of doing. When he decides I want to be slick, this guy's defense is a lot better than Groves's. Trust me. So, those are my thoughts on Chris Eubank Jr. in the wake of his fight with Arthur Abraham. There have been a lot of people out there scathing in their criticism of this man. I mean, he just beat Arthur Abraham. Yes, Abraham was tailor-made for him. Not only was Abraham the kind of style that Eubank Jr. likes to fight against, in terms of a guy who squares up his shoulders and comes forward, but also he's a guy with a passive defense. That means he's not going to counterpunch. And he's also a guy who at 37 or 38, whatever he is, he only fights in spurts. So he's going to give Eubank plenty of time to do whatever he likes, rest when he wants, so on and so forth. He's not applying relentless pressure. So all that is understood. But Gilberto Ramirez fought Arthur Abraham just last year. He beat him in similar fashion to Eubank. In fact, it wasn't as dominant as Eubank's performance against Abraham. Eubank hurt Abraham far more and far more often than Ramirez did for my money. But yet Ramirez was praised and hailed as the new dark horse of the division. There was very little criticism of him. But Eubank Jr., oh no, he gets all this incredible criticism and whatnot. And it might be because you don't like his personality, you don't like the arrogance and the cockiness, okay. But don't let that blind you to what he actually does well. Power is not the be-all and end-all in boxing, people. There's more to it than that. If there wasn't more to it than that, then the likes of Andre Ward and Floyd Mayweather wouldn't be as successful as they have been. And I'm not saying Eubank Jr. is as good as those guys, no. But he don't have to be. Because the guys in his division are not exactly all-time greats at the moment, are they? Or is Callum Smith up there with Canelo in terms of his ability? Or Marquez? Are DeGale and Groves up there with Shane Mosley in terms of all-time great status? Or Pacquiao? He don't have to be as good as Mayweather and Andre Ward. He's not fighting the level of opposition that are as high as the level of opposition those guys have fought. So, you guys are missing the point. Chris Eubank Jr., from what I've seen of him, is good enough to compete and hold his own with the majority, I'm not saying all, but at least the majority of super middleweights out there and get wins over the majority of them at world level. That don't mean he's not going to lose. That don't mean he's going to beat everybody. But he's a legitimate world level fighter. I'm convinced. I'm completely convinced at this point. The punching power, okay, it's not amazing. But the work rate, the accuracy, yes, the accuracy. Because there are a lot of guys out there who throw high volume. But the vast majority of punches are half blocked. They're not landing clean. They don't get the right angle to get them through the guard. Eubank Jr. lands cleanly with regularity against just about every fighter he has faced. That's what he does. He throws a lot and he lands a lot of clean ones. And even if his power's only average, it's going to take its toll on you when he keeps landing like that cleanly. Billy Joe Saunders managed to make it through. Hey, Billy Joe Saunders was vastly more experienced than Chris Eubank Jr., both as an amateur and at a high level, even as a pro. Or at a higher level than Eubank anyway. And Eubank still held his own in that fight. Yeah, he lost a relatively close decision. but he still made it difficult for a man who was vastly more experienced than he was. And Eubank Jr. has improved a lot since then, best believe. Not only technically, but mentally, he's come on since then. So, again, any of you guys who are saying all this stuff, Eubank Jr.'s garbage, he's rubbish, he's this, that, and the other, he's a hype job, he's shit. Who is he really fighting that is so great? Is George Groves that great? Is Callum Smith that great? Is James DeGale that great? I mean, these are good fighters, but they've all got weaknesses. As I said, Callum Smith, stylistically, is tailor-made for Eubank Jr. It's just his power and his sheer size with the long arms that would make it potentially difficult for Eubank Jr. or perhaps insurmountable. But stylistically, in terms of the things that Callum Smith does technically, there's nothing there from a technical point of view that Callum Smith does that is a particular worry to Chris Eubank Jr. You know, he's a pretty basic guy. It's just his size and his power that is not so basic, that is not so ordinary. So those are my thoughts on it, people. I think people are getting way too obsessed about Eubank Jr.'s perceived weaknesses, and that is blinding them to his actual strengths, of which he has numerous strengths. Let me know how you feel in the comment section below, people. Again, people love misquoting me. People love saying, oh, well, Hatman, you're saying Eubank Jr. is going to dominate the division. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying he can pick up legitimate world-level wins, and I believe he will. I believe that he is being underestimated by a lot of his critics, who are being blinded by either their obsession with punching power in boxing in general, or their hatred for Eubank for whatever reason. Those are my thoughts. Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. It's Hatman, I'm out.